in hopes that it helps anybody, I want to talk about what my dad with stage 4 ate and what I did in terms of food to help him eat as much as possible and maintain his weight, even through the nausea that he had, the metallic taste that he got from the chemo to just generally make food taste terrible, and also mouth sores, foods that he was able to actually eat, in hopes that it at least gives you some ideas, a starting point for whoever you may be caring for with taking chemo right now or about to take chemo so you can prepare. And the goals of all the foods that I'm mentioning here from my dad was, one, help maintain weight, actually something that my dad would enjoy eating, so it just helps him feel better, get the nutrients that he needs for his body to recover. And honestly, for myself, mentally, to know that I'm not just sitting there like watching him waste away from the chemo, because it was kind of bad, right? Like very literally during the months that my dad was on the chemo, taking 5 rounds of chemo, and he took 2 different drugs at once, cisplatin and gemcitabine. He was practically completely incapacitated. He was like, unconscious essentially for the days and days and days. He would just basically lie in bed or sit on the couch and mostly be unresponsive when you talk to him, other than like a word or two maybe, or like a yes or no. Number 1 is eggs. Because if you think about an egg, right? An egg is essentially like what the baby chicken would eat. Like most of the nutrients in there is what makes a baby chicken grow. So it's essentially a food that is packed completely of like a full set of nutritions. And you can cook eggs in multiple ways, which of course you can scramble it, which is quite easy to eat as long as you don't overcook it, or you could boil it, which is also quite easy to eat. And the reason why eggs are first, right? Not only in nutrition, but in the flexibility in cooking to make it easier to eat. My dad simply likes to eat eggs. We would cook that up for him. It would help him get that protein, the fats, the different vitamins in there that's in the yolk. So very good nutrition. And towards the beginning, again, we did scramble it a lot because that was quite easy to eat if you cook it not too overcooked and hard. And we avoided things like fried eggs just because it's a little bit harder to eat. And then towards later on, when the chemo was more severe, we actually just boiled some eggs and had them on hand. So anytime my dad was feeling just like a little bit able to eat, he could get that boiled egg ready for him, and then he would be able to eat that. It's very soft, so it doesn't irritate his mouth sores too much. Again, he's also still getting that nutrients. And actually, the flavor of the eggs is quite plain, right? If you think about just a plain egg white, and also even the yolk, once you mix it together in a scrambled egg, it's a quite plain flavor. So when my dad and the chemo started to affect his taste buds, like everything was very like metallic. And honestly, he mentioned that it sort of tasted like vomit sometimes, anything that he ate that actually had strong flavors. The eggs was able to go down much easier because of that actually mild flavor, and maybe just add a little salt. And number 2 is what I call bulking balls. And this is actually just like something that I made for my dad. And I think I'll just like pop the recipe on the screen or something like that. But it was a combination of coconut oil, nut butter, protein powder, and just a little bit of sweetener, alternative sweetener. You can use any sweetener you think is good, like stevia, allulose, anything like that, and you feel it's healthy. My dad was generally trying to avoid sugar, which is why we avoided those things. I only added very little sweetener too, just to make it taste a little bit normal. Essentially what it was I mixed all those things together, and the coconut oil would kind of make all those ingredients, the nut butter, stick together. And I would typically try to use almond butter and macadamia butter, simply because I felt that it's like a bit higher in fats and supposedly healthy fats. Of course, you can do your research, find what works for you. And of course, you have a nut allergy, avoid that. But you put these, mix it up, and it would all clump together. And in one ingredient I did fail to mention is almond powder, which is the bulk of it. Has proteins, again, has the fats, has minerals from the nuts. And after I clumped into the balls, like maybe a little bit less than ping pong ball size, so it's sort of bite size, easy for my dad to eat, I would put these things in the refrigerator, and the coconut oil would harden up. And my dad, anytime he was feeling ready to eat, you just grab one, pop it in his mouth, it would sort of melt away and he could easily swallow it. So that is one idea for you. Even if you don't make these things specifically, could you make some sort of little snack like that would be nice and easy to eat for whoever you're caring for? And just consider actually the individual ingredients. Like maybe you want to just get nut butter, and they could have a little spoon of that every once in a while, and find whatever nut butter that works for you and you think is healthy. Or could it just be like coconut oil made in some other snack, or maybe added to a shake, which I'll get into shakes in a second. And I just want to mention that if you do actually want the entire protocol of what we did at home and honestly at the doctor's office, like hours and hours of videos of what me and my dad did to help him heal as much as possible, also take on any severe treatments, even outside of chemo, and how to figure these things out for yourself, I actually have a free community where I put all of that stuff down, documented all of that stuff down for you so you have a good starting point. And also being a community, there's people there that are also in a similar situation where you can simply just share ideas, find what may work for you. If that sounds helpful, it is completely free to join. Just in the top link description, you can join there. Now, onto the shakes, which is probably the easiest thing that you can make and also the easiest thing that could go down for them during chemo and they have those mouth sore problems, if that is the biggest problem. What I like to do is just keep the shake very plain, and you can experiment with different ingredients, right? But for my dad, mostly that would just be like I would water, add a little protein powder, and particularly like weight gain was a problem because he just wasn't eating enough, right? So I would add a little bit of coconut oil because if very literally scientifically, if you look at protein, you look at carbs, you look at fats. Fats is 9 calories per gram, I believe is the number. And carbs in protein is 4 calories per gram. So very literally by adding fat, he's able to take more down for the same volume, more calories for the same volume, which I think contributed a lot to helping my dad eat. And honestly, that coconut oil also has a bit of a mild flavor, very mild, and my dad didn't mind it. So that is something to consider. I heard other people try olive oil, but it way too strong of a flavor for my dad. And then also sometimes I would just add a little of plain cocoa powder. Not cocoa powder, like cacao powder, which is the actual bean or plant that people make chocolate from. And my dad really likes sort of that chocolate flavor. So that is something to consider. Sometimes I would add a little bit of Greek yogurt as well. Add like sometimes bits of fruit, add some avocados. Make the shake however you like. So make the shake however you like, but I would just remember maybe trying to incorporate some fats, whether that is the coconut oil itself or just simply adding some nut butter, like macadamia nut butter. In fourth now is soups. So you can also talk about like bone broth like this. And the reason why we never did bone broth specifically for my dad is because if you do some research, and this is something that I heard from Dr. William Davis, he's a cardiologist. He also talks a lot about like the microbiome and different things like that. But essentially he said bone broth, and the traditional bone broth that's usually boiled for like 24 hours or very, very long hours. And sometimes you add a little bit of vinegar. He mentioned that lead naturally deposits in the bones of pretty much all animals. So by you taking those bones of like cows or chickens or whatever it is, and you boiling it and adding the vinegar, it makes it so that lead comes out of the bones and you're taking that in. And from what I've heard from him, it is almost always at dangerous levels, whether that animal is like organic or anything like that, because essentially you're taking out the lifetime accumulation of lead in their body. So the thing that we do instead for my dad was simply making a regular soup or more of a meat broth. So what we would do is like, let's say we had a chicken. We cut the meat off the chicken because we're going to cook something else with it. Well, we keep that chicken with some of that meat still left down, right? And we just put it in a pot with some water and let that boil for maybe just like 1, 2, maybe up to 3 hours. Put a little different ingredients there. Maybe put an onion, maybe put like a carrot, maybe you want to put celery, whatever you like in there. Or you could just keep it plain and add some salt. And my dad would drink that because the nutrients it would come out of the meat that's left and a bit of the nutrients from the bone itself and not have that lead problem because we avoid the adding vinegar. We avoid boiling it too long. And that is something for my dad. And actually just one thing you may want to avoid is actually the fat that gathers on the top. We would skim that away simply because during chemo, it really did irritate my dad. Like he couldn't handle the fats from that. It would just like upset his stomach and make him feel more nausea. And fifth is nuts. This was more of a thing in the beginning when the mouth sores were less of a problem. But macadamia nuts, they're so high in fats. And if you do some research, at least I've heard they're very healthy fats. So my dad would eat a lot of macadamia nuts towards the beginning when he could chew a bit more easy and these like nut particles didn't bother his mouth. So if nuts are not an issue for you, like maybe look into almonds, maybe look into walnuts, maybe look into pumpkin seeds, hazelnuts, whatever nuts that they may like to eat is something to consider. And of course, also is when we're going to appointments. Nuts is a very easy thing that we actually brought along a lot. Because sometimes my dad, if he wasn't like fasting or anything like that, he would have those nuts as a snack, and you don't have to worry about like coconut oil melting or like a shake spilling or anything like that. They're just like a dry little thing that he could eat. And the next thing is clean protein bars. And why I specifically say clean, because I would just make sure to always look at the ingredients and make sure any protein bars that you would buy matches the diet that you have for the person that has the cancer right now. So for my dad specifically, my dad and his cancer, he wanted to avoid sugar. So we particularly picked protein bars with very, very low carb, like less than 4 grams, like less than 2 grams per whole bar. And why I mentioned bars at all in general is because these bars, they're very processed, right? And by being processed, like a lot of times when my dad would eat like a Quest bar, I think is what it's called, and one other brand, I don't remember exactly what it is, but many times it was a Quest bar because it was pretty low carb. And I know there's like some other alternative sweeteners in there. Just take a look at the ingredients to see if it'll be okay for you. But for whatever reason, it was just very easy to eat for my dad, because he mentioned that like he would take a bite of it and practically it would disintegrate in his mouth and he would just be like swallowing the liquid bar. And also these things are very easy to just take back and forth. And I would, at least for my dad, we always prioritized like regular whole foods, so like those nuts or like a little snack that you make. But just having those bars is convenient, right? And having something when you otherwise would have nothing is of course much better, right? And now if you take away nothing and you don't want to have any of these specific foods, I would just think about this. Number one, find things that are easy to eat, that are mild in flavor, or at least have flavors that would be okay for that person with chemo later on. And they have some fairly good macros, whether that's a bit higher in fat for the calories and also have some protein, have like a amount of carbs that you're okay with. That is the rule, and how you can find it any type of food for yourself during chemo. Now, if you found this video very helpful, YouTube also thinks this video will be most helpful for you to watch next. Alternatively, you can watch my latest video right here.